This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Good morning, sir. Afternoon for us, morning for you still, obviously, because you're an hour behind, right? Or just one or two? What is it?
I am
right?
1 hour behind you. It is a pleasure to join you, by the way. I was listening to the last minute or so of the show before I came in, and I got to tell you, I got some fantasy baseball rosters that aren't winning right now, but Big O, they're doing all the little things. That's all you can ask.
Justin Fields. You know, he's not rushing for many yards, not scoring a lot of touchdowns, but he's doing all the little things.
Let me tell you, Juan Soto is hitting 198 for me right now, but all the little things. What a clubhouse guy.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, that's what they're saying. You know, do you follow hockey much at all?
I follow hockey periodically when the Blackhawks are good, and that hasn't been in a little while.
Okay, all right, but Kane. Well, you know, he's not scoring any goals. He's not doing anything, but he's doing all the little things. You know, That shit drives me crazy. Like, you know, they're talking about Barkov down here, and the guy he is a great talent. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the guy is sickly gifted, okay? I mean, dude, very few people have his talents. I get that. But my man, in the playoffs, it's like, brother, you're MIA all the time. And this Kachuk guy he's been a monster the entire season, bro. I mean,
it's one of those sports where, you know, and the NBA is the same way, perhaps to a greater extent, where one great player can have such an outsized impact, and you feel it the other direction when they're not doing what they're paid to do, right? And I couldn't agree with you more. Like, in certain sports with certain athletes, it's just not enough to do all the little things, because the big things win titles.
My role player is supposed to do the little things. I don't have a problem with my role players doing all the little things, okay? You know, that's fine. But my stars have to carry my team.
Big things, please.
Big things, exactly. Give me a freaking break, bro. Oh, he's doing all the little things. Get out of here. All right. The Dolphins, they will select 51 and 84 in the draft state. Of course, they have 197 and 238 in the 6th and 7th rounds. We don't give a shit about that one. But
51 is a good player. 51's a good player.
51's a good. Well, and no, dude, think about this. What's it called? What's the name of our safety? Now that I'm brain farting, help me out there, Sean. Name our safety. It was a freaking Pro Bowler. What's his name?
Javon
Holland. So Holland, Robert Hunt. I know they didn't use him here, but Gesicki would have been a successful second rounder. Like, you think about it, they have a lot of success in the second round in their career here. So the second round pick, we're really looking forward to it at 51. And then at 84 is another pick. And you're the perfect dude to have this question for. Why? Because you're a freaking Bears fan. And there is no team over the last 6-7 years that has drafted and had more tight ends on their roster than the Chicago Bears. So you should be, well-versed with that position, since you've been talking tight ends I don't know, half your team a couple of years ago, I believe, had 40 tight ends on the team. I'm not sure, but it was pretty close to that. So I figured, you know, you're probably prepped again because the Bears are going to take another tight end. It's kind of like Matt Millen, you know, taking wide receivers. It's kind of the same thing there with the Bears. So I figured I'd ask you, Dolphins need a tight end, second or third round picks. Do you have two guys that you would say can catch and block like Mike McDaniel likes?
You know, the other reason it's important to have me is that not only am I a Bears fan, I'm also an Iowa fan and an Iowa graduate. So literally half the league's tight ends went to my college, and I've watched them all for many years, right? Iowa is as close to tight end university as you can find. Yeah, I think particularly when we look at the pick at 51, there's going to be at least one really interesting tight end on the board. And I'm not sure which one it'll be, because we think that, Kincaid, we think that Meyer are going to be gone by the time you're picking in the second round. Two guys, though, that I think are particularly interesting. The first is the kid out of Georgia. I shouldn't call him a kid because he's a mountain. Darnell Washington. Yeah. I don't like, you read some of the scouting reports and that like people aren't even sold on him as a blocker, but it hardly matters because he is literally the size of a left tackle, listed 6'7", 270.
I think that's his strength is blocking. That's his strength, actually.
Yeah, look, like he's not like, well, so the scouting reports will tell you that he's not even like in terms of technique where he needs to be, but good luck. Again, he's a left tackle playing tight end. He's just an absolute house. And the other thing is you start looking at some of the advanced receiving metrics, even though he didn't have like, it wasn't a super busy season as a receiver necessarily, but yards per route run, yards after the catch, they all look really good. So a bit underutilized as a receiver, just a mountain. You know, you start thinking about, now listen, I'm somebody who's a proponent of, and I think Mike McDaniel's probably a proponent of, just giving the ball to your best playmakers when you get inside the red zone. But when we start thinking about guys who are just prototypical red zone dominators, you're talking about a player with a huge catch radius. He's open even when he's not open because he's too big, right? Like he'll box out a linebacker, he'll box out a defensive back. Like good luck. I don't know what you do with 6'7" and 270. This is somebody who's like a little bit bigger than Jimmy Graham was. Pretty good athlete. So I really like Washington. I don't know if he hangs out until 50 because he's just as an athletic specimen, he's so impressive. And then the other guy is my guy, the Iowa kid, Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta is going to pay a penalty in this draft for having been attached to a team with just terrible quarterback play and really unimaginative offense for the last couple of years. But you want to talk about somebody who just dominated in the short to intermediate area, and like Iowa only throws a couple of different routes to tight ends. He just sucked them all up and nobody could cover him. Great after the catch too. Like Sam Laporta's as good a receiver as you're going to find at this position, and as good with the ball in his hands, I think, as you're going to find at this position. The problem is, if it's a problem, he's certainly not Washington's size, right? He's more of he's more of that traditional tight end, you know, like 6'4", 250, 260. But just a really, really gifted receiving threat. I think he can. One nice thing when you get a tight end who comes out of like Stanford, Notre Dame, you know, Iowa, sort of the tight end factories, Miami. They can generally do it all. Not all of them, obviously. We've produced a handful of receiving only tight ends and blocking only tight ends over the years, but Sam Laporta is coming into the league really well coached, and really well coached in the fundamentals of a difficult position. So I think Laporta is somebody interesting who's not going to fall, I would guess, much farther than 50. So this might be exactly the range where you can get somebody like that. And again, if Washington were to fall, I'd be super interested in him.
Okay. How about in the third round?
If we're talking tight ends, I doubt that Musgrave falls that far. I don't know what to do with Musgrave, the Oregon State.
You're not as in love, apparently, in the third round of anybody falling down there, huh?
No, well, I just don't think Laporta and Washington get there, and I'm kind of infatuated with those two. Like, I think those are guys who can deliver first round value at like a second round price. The South Dakota State kid is interesting, Tucker Kraft. But you also never know what to do with the guys who dominate at lower levels of competition against, you know, non-Power 5 teams. But he obviously a very good player, looks like a prototypical NFL tight end. So I'm interested in him. I would be more interested though in Laporta and Washington. Those are kind of my two guys. Those have been like pet players for me. I can't like. We just don't see a tight end with receiving skills at Washington's size very often. So I'm just enamored.
I think he's a slightly bigger version of Ben Coates.
Well, that's a Hall of Famer you're describing, right? Like
if he polishes up because you know Ben Coates was a smooth tight end, like he could catch. Yes. But I like everything else about him, and so if he can become a nice pass catcher. I see him in that Ben Coates role because Ben was a big dude and he was a hard matchup for anybody, man, because he was so big and you could not get around him or you're not going to get on top of him because he was so long and tall. And so it made such a huge target for the quarterback. And Ben wasn't like a deer running down the sidelines. You know, he had just decent speed. So this guy reminds me a lot of a raw like Ben Coates.
And Coates, of course, is also somebody, if he played today, the stats would be silly because we didn't even necessarily expect much in terms of receiving production from a tight end. Let me give you, courtesy of the great Scott Barrett, let me give you a list of things in which Washington led all tight ends in this draft class. Yards per target. Depth adjusted yards per target, yards per reception, missed tackles force per reception, yards after the catch per reception, explosive play rate. Like these are all the things that Washington led it. And we don't even talk about him as like a necessarily an adept receiver. But all of the advanced stuff, it just looks really good for Washington as a pass catcher. And there's little question that he's going to be able to block because again, he is the literal size of an NFL tackle.
Good stuff. All right. You expecting the Jets Packers trade to happen here in the next couple of days during the draft?
This is just the most annoying thing because it's already sucked up, so much oxygen and there's been so much analysis of it and it hasn't even happened. And then once it does happen, we're going to have to talk about it for a full day all over again. It's just another year where, for whatever reason, Aaron Rodgers of all people dominates the draft news cycle for like a day. So I would expect it to happen. Rappaport has suggested that they're back to talking. They have to be close on compensation. It has to happen. The Jets have basically signed their way into a position where and they've talked their way into a position where they can't afford to not come away from this offseason without Aaron Rodgers. It like Rodgers himself seems like it's Jets or bust. So I'm relatively confident it's going to happen. I've been writing up player profiles for Lindy's pre-draft magazine, and I'm writing up player profiles as if Aaron Rodgers is their quarterback. Like it's going to be the least surprising news when it breaks. Absolutely has to happen sometime soon, though.
Let me ask you something, just out of curiosity, from an outsider's point of view, because to me, I've never seen anybody more, at least here in South Florida. I've seen other types of lightning rods in sports, like Tim Tebow was a lightning rod. Obviously, Deshaun Watson, different kinds of lightning rods. All kinds of players are different kinds, and Tua is a different kind of lightning rod. But did you find it interesting, or maybe you didn't even think about this, but people are criticizing Tua because he says he had that conversation with his family about retiring, even though if you listen to it, you could tell he had no plans on retiring. By the way, a guy that busts up both his ankles and says, hey, let's repair him with titanium rods. I don't think that's the kind of guy that quits. Okay. Just say, you bust up your hip. No, I'll be ready in 9 months for Brockers to slam me for the Rams on the floor. Don't worry about it. I'll be ready for that. That doesn't sound like a guy to me that quits, but whatever, people want to make up. But here's the part that I love, okay? So now he's being criticized. Even Randy Mueller came out, well, I don't know how you commit to a long-term contract if he's talking about retirement. When if you really know the kid, he really didn't think about retirement. But here's the best part. So we were just a couple of months removed from everybody saying Tua should retire. So you had a whole bunch of people, oh, no, he's had a couple of concussions. He shouldn't play. He's a father now. He's a husband. He should retire. So we had everybody, not everybody, but a bunch of people wanting him to retire. So if he gets concussed, he's irresponsible if he doesn't retire. Or, well, how can you commit to somebody if he's talking about retirement? It's like, dude, he can't win with whatever comment he says. It doesn't matter. It's going to be spun negatively by folks.
Yeah, well, I think you really hit on the essence of the Tua situation right there, right? Like if you're there's always a little bit of ammunition until Tua plays a full season, 17 games, and it's a relatively even season without the massive highs and the massive lows. There are gonna be skeptics, right? He's probably got to check that box. He's probably got to check the 17 game or 16 game box. Short of that, like I don't know what you want in a young quarterback, and very different players, but I feel the same way about, as a Bears fan about Justin Fields. I just really like first 3 years of your career. And I get it. Like things are different, and Patrick Mahomes is special, and Joe Burrow is special, and we've seen some great quarterbacks do special things at young ages. But really, first 2-3 years of your career, I just want to see evidence of like potential greatness. I want to see certain traits. They can be different for each quarterback, and I want to see potential to invest like the next 10 years of the trajectory of my franchise in you. Like I get it that there are still some negatives that Tua has to clear, and I think you can always find reasons to be critical. His family just would not have been good family members if they didn't talk to him about at least like somebody in the family must be worried about his long-term health, right? He had multiple concussions in rapid succession. I think we know enough about that injury now to know that, one concussion immediately on top of another concussion is like puts you at some risk. It is a perfectly reasonable thing for his family to have been concerned about. And I'm with you. I've not heard Tua say anything or suggest anything that made me think, wow, he was personally really close to hanging it up. I haven't had that impression yet at all.
The guy,
I wouldn't even like
gets
again.
knocked out. The guy gets wobbly in the Buffalo game and comes back in the second half to win it. Yeah, no, that's a quitter right there. The guy that got hit in the Buffalo and then played 4 days later in the Bengals game, and he easily would have played in the Jets game or the playoff game if you let him. This is not. These people are wired like a policeman is every day, like a fireman is every day. They want to do their jobs, bro. They love their jobs, and they know what's at risk. They know.
Yeah, and again, it would be absolutely silly if his family didn't broach the subject with him, because we are now talking about a player with a multiple concussion history. It's dangerous. He's at risk, but if you saw his college career, you've seen any of him as a pro. It's pretty clear that he loves the game, and pretty clear that he's committed to it.
Victor Oladipo is at risk, and he kept playing, and unfortunately suffered another knee injury this weekend. Brother, they're not. It's easy for anybody else to say quit, and you don't live in that person's body, and you don't have their heart and their desire and their fire to do what they do, and that's it. That's the bottom line. And you can't live like that person because you don't think like that person. You don't have a passion. And obviously, we don't have the talents to do what they do.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty special thing. That's a pretty special drug, okay? To be able to do the things that most of us can't do. That's the kind of drug that you want to keep performing. You love that, the gladiators in the middle of the arena, everybody's praising them. That's the same thing that these guys feel. And when that is gone, they can never replace it. And, they know that, it's a different world that they live in. And I don't think people understand that. All right. What do you got going on Yahoo so folks can check you out?
We're going to have a lot of draft content this week and next week. I'm gonna have some rookie draft ranks coming up. We're gonna be spinning things as picks are made on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So just keep checking back with Yahoo Fantasy.
And your tight end rankings.
I'm never not ranking tight ends. Yes.
There you go. Follow him on Twitter at Andy Behrens. Andy, appreciate you, bro. We'll catch up next week. Thank you, my man.
Thanks, brother.
You got it. There you go. Andy Behrens, our Sports Grill, Miami Dolphins, and NFL report.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.